Tired of feeling left out, these so-called documented dreamers have started speaking out.
We just want to be included in any proposed legislation that's related to dreamers.
This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. Hard to believe, but we are 2/3 of the way through President Biden's first year in office, and we wanted to check in on his campaign promises around one issue that the administration has taken a lot of heat on: immigration.
In the first 100 days of my administration, no one will be deported at all. This is about how America is safer, stronger, more prosperous when we have a fair, orderly, and humane legal immigration system.
Tonight, we're taking a closer look at how much progress, or lack thereof, the Biden administration has actually made on what the president pledged to do. Let's start with what's recently been making headlines: the surge of migrants at the U.S. southern border. The Biden administration promised a safe, orderly, and fair process for asylum seekers. But the ever-growing number of migrants trying to enter the U.S. has caught the White House off guard. While taking heat from all sides, President Biden shifted his message.
I can say quite clearly, don't come, and what we're in the process of getting set up.
To try and get a grip on the situation at the border, he's partially extended a strict Trump-era policy that he actually denounced as a candidate. The policy, called Title 42, gives border agents the power to quickly send migrants back to Mexico or their home countries during a pandemic, without allowing them to make an asylum claim at all. While the Trump administration used that emergency power to push back all migrants, the Biden administration is only expelling adults and some families, not children showing up on their own. Still, in the first 5 full months of the Biden administration, 64% of all the people encountered by the Border Patrol were expelled under Title 42. The Biden administration extended that policy indefinitely, angering rights groups like the ACLU. Earlier this summer, Biden did put an end to the Remain in Mexico program. It was a signature Trump policy that forced around 70,000 migrants to wait for months, sometimes years, on the streets of dangerous Mexican towns for their day in U.S. immigration courts. Now that's a thing of the past. And one other notable reversal: the Biden White House has, of course, started reuniting families separated under Trump's zero-tolerance policy.
It feels like a dream. Like, I was in the car and I was just like, this is finally happening.
Then we have immigration detention centers. Biden campaigned on ending prolonged detention and private prisons, which house most immigrants in ICE custody. But just like with asylum, he's had to backtrack, citing a rapidly shifting reality on the ground. Since the end of February, the number of detainees has more than doubled to nearly 27,000. That's in part because the number of detainees who have passed their initial asylum screening has essentially doubled since April. According to Immigration and Customs Enforcement policy, those are people that shouldn't even be in detention. Biden has closed 2 controversial detention centers in Georgia and Massachusetts, but advocates say that's not enough. A map from Freedom for Immigrants gives a quick snapshot of just how many immigration detention facilities there are. Republicans in the Border Patrol Union are angry too. They argue that not detaining migrants at the border is essentially bringing back what some refer to as the catch and release policy, which could just end up creating a magnet for even more illegal immigration.
People are crossing the border illegally, knowing that they're going to be released into the United States, never to have to leave this country.
The Border Patrol has been so overrun that it's been releasing tens of thousands of asylum seekers into the country without an immigration court date.
No me dio ninguna información, solo me dijeron que me iba a llamar algún juez o algo para presentarme.
These migrants are supposed to check in with ICE within 60 days, but some outlets have reported many don't show up. We have to mention Biden's push to legalize recipients of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, or DACA, and other undocumented immigrants who've been here a long time.
All of those so-called dreamers, those DACA kids, they're going to be immediately certified again to be able to stay in this country and put on a path to citizenship.
Some background here. The DACA program was originally created under former President Barack Obama through an executive action in 2012. It offered deportation protection and work permits to undocumented immigrants who were brought to the US as children, so long as they lived in the US since 2007, didn't have a serious criminal record, and were students, high school graduates, or veterans. Trump tried to dismantle the program, but by many it is seen as a successful program that works. A 2017 national study revealed that 91% of DACA respondents are currently employed. Their average hourly wage is $17.46 an hour. But in July, a federal court judge in Houston ruled it to be illegal since it's not technically approved by Congress. It's just the latest battle in a long series that Dreamers have faced. It basically put DACA applications on hold, leaving more than 55,000 applicants in limbo.
I had submitted my application and everything. I actually had already gotten my fingerprint. I was actually really excited. I did get my hopes up.
Biden upped the pressure on Congress to do something permanent. Democrats might try and pass legislation through a much larger spending bill by using budget reconciliation. Senator Bob Menendez says he's optimistic the Senate parliamentarian will greenlight immigration provisions that are in the budget package, something many Dreamers see as one step closer to a secure life in the US. There's also a group of people who may not even realize they don't have protections, and that's those who are dependent on their parents' visa. Some don't even realize aging out of their protections can happen. Newsy's Ben Shimiso has a story of two so-called documented dreamers.
My whole life, it was kind of building up to that moment where, one day, as terrible as things are only going to get worse.
When Glohan Choi turned 21, he became undocumented despite having lived in the US legally since he was a toddler.
I actually thought I was the only undocumented Korean person in the entire country.
He came to Chicago in the late 90s as a dependent on his father's student visa. Soon after, his sister was diagnosed with severe autism, and his parents decided she'd have a better life in the US.
Everything just kind of started falling apart.
For over 10 years, they tried without success to change the family's student visa to something more permanent.
By working at restaurants, factories, laundromats, as a limousine driver, and all those places said, we'll sponsor you. And none of them ever did that.
As a result, Choi, now 29, lost his dependent visa on his 21st birthday. It's a prospect that around 200,000 young immigrants in the US currently face. The possibility of aging out of their dependent visa without a clear path to permanent residency. Tired of feeling left out, these so-called documented dreamers have started speaking out.
We just want to be included in any proposed legislation that's related to Dreamers.
Perrine Matre's parents legally brought her to the US from India when she was an infant, when they went to work at the University of Iowa.
I felt like any other American kid.
She grew up on a dependent visa and managed to change it to a student one after turning 21 in April. But that only buys her a few years. Once she finishes her biomedical engineering degree, things will get complicated.
Once we turn 21 or once we graduate college, it's like we leave. It doesn't make sense.
She'll either be forced to self-deport to a country she doesn't remember living in, or she'll have to find an employer to sponsor a work visa. But those visas have limited spots and are highly coveted.
That's what my future's going to look like.
Despite the uncertainty, Matre feels hopeful. She has found a community and a voice by joining Improve the Dream, an organization that raises awareness of the fate of documented dreamers.
We were all kids when we came to this country. We were innocent, we were young.
Their activism is paying off. A new bipartisan bill would grant them permanent residency if they've maintained legal status in the US for at least 10 years and graduated from college. If that doesn't pan out, they hope Democrats will manage to pass immigration reform unilaterally through budget reconciliation. Ben Shimiso, Newsy, Chicago.
Here to talk to us a bit more about that story is Newsy's Ben Shimiso. Benny, thanks for joining us on ITL. I wanted to piggyback on the last part of your story there. If Democrats manage to pull off immigration reform this year, we know that dreamers could benefit, but who else could benefit from that?
Yeah, that's right. Besides dreamers, farm workers might also benefit, as well as essential workers in healthcare and other fields, and also people who fled war and natural disasters. That could be potentially 6 million immigrants who would receive a pathway to citizenship, Christian, but there are still some obstacles. First, all 50 Democrats in the Senate would have to be on board, and then the Senate parliamentarian would have to approve adding immigration reform to reconciliation.
I want to back up here just a bit. I know that as an immigration reporter, you have covered a wide range of stories, and we've been watching this over the last few years. If I could brag on you here for just a little bit, we've been watching you do this over the last few years. I know that you've been at the U.S. southern border, you've been beyond the U.S. southern border, and you've brought back so many personal stories about people and their struggles with immigration. And it all sounds so complicated and so complex. I'm curious to know, just why is that?
Well, oftentimes, because immigration law is so complicated, it's compared to the tax code, right? Because the tax code, of course, is convoluted. But with immigration, the tiniest rule or detail can have enormous consequences on immigrants. And, you know, when you talk to people who fall through the cracks, such as dreamers or others, it's really humbling and at times very emotional. And it kind of makes you realize how you and I take our own immigration privileges for granted, right? So for you, being a citizen, for me, a permanent resident, being able to work here in the United States, we just don't think about it twice, take it for granted, when for so many people here in the United States and elsewhere, obtaining a stable or legal status in the United States is huge and can cause enormous distress.
I'm glad that you're adding that perspective, because we saw that in your package, and you know how difficult it is even for people who've been here legally for years and years and years. I want to shift gears here just a bit. There's a group of individuals that we haven't talked about today, and that's deported veterans. Some of them are actually feeling pretty hopeful about their current situation. Can you talk to us about this just a bit?
Yeah, so for these veterans who served in the US military, but because they committed certain crimes, they are now in exile, there is new hope. Under a new Biden initiative, some cases are going to get reviewed, and people who were, quote, unjustly removed might be able to come back here in the United States. I got to hear one woman's story about what she went through, but I do want to warn our viewers, her story can get graphic at times.
I miss my daughter, my grandbaby. I want to be there for them now. Make up for lost time.
For more than 10 years, Iraq War veteran Laura Mesa has been banished from the United States and living in exile in Costa Rica.
It's been really hard not being a mother to my daughter, not being there for her.
The former U.S. Army private was deported in 2009 for possession of cannabis and attempted robbery.
I was using heavy drugs.
She says she committed those crimes while self-medicating with drugs after being raped in training and then sent to Iraq.
Both things, boom, one after another, was not at all easy.
Now, for the first time in years, Mesa has hope. Last month, the Biden administration announced a new initiative to bring back veterans who were, quote, unjustly removed. Details on who will be included have yet to be announced, but Mesa is optimistic.
I'm very blessed and I'm happy. I feel like this is going to be, a new beginning.
Born in Costa Rica, Mesa was brought to the US when she was only 5. 15 years later, she got her green card and joined the army.
I thought it would be a great way to, give back to the country that gave me so many things.
While training in Germany, she says she was raped by a fellow soldier. She didn't report the assault, fearing retaliation.
He invited me to a beer. After this beer, I passed out totally. I woke up in his, his sheets in his bed, naked with no clothes on. And he was telling me, do you remember what happened? And I said, no, what happened? And he said, you don't remember? You enjoyed it.
After 1 year of service, she was honorably discharged and diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and military sexual trauma.
And how can somebody like me be deported? Shouldn't I be back there in a VA medical center getting help and the treatment that I need?
ICE has been deporting veterans convicted of certain crimes for decades, though we don't know how many because the agency has failed to keep tabs. Advocates said the number ranges from the hundreds to possibly thousands.
I don't want to die like a dog. I don't want to die like a dog over here in Mexico, abandoned like a lot of the veterans have.
If I was to be welcomed back, I would go back with open arms.
In interviews, many exiled vets described how they were scooped up by US immigration agents after serving time for drug-related convictions, essentially being punished twice for the same crime.
I was ready to go to the streets. They're ready to give me my pocket money to pay for my bus. Next thing I know, I'm in a detention facility in Eloy, Arizona.
For all veterans in exile, deportation would have been entirely prevented had they become citizens during their military service, but misinformation and red tape often get in the way.
If we believe in rehabilitation, if we believe in justice, then we need to give folks a second chance.
Jennifer Martinez of Repatriate or Patriots urges the Biden White House to bring back as many vets as possible.
It should include all of them, no matter honorable service.
But immigration lawyer Margaret Stock, an expert in deported vet cases, suspects the readmission criteria will be narrow.
The government will look at a particular case and go, well, this person is not worthy of being brought back for whatever reason.
Mesa prays that won't be the case for her.
I just want the government and the country that I serve to help me and so that I can be able to go back and be at home with my family where I belong.
Ben Shimiso, Newsy.
As wildfires continue to burn across the West, a new UN climate report tells us the Earth is warming faster than we previously thought, and time is running out to avoid catastrophic outcomes.